This historical context explains the people, places, and events that shaped Islam's origin and early development. It matches what VCAA expects for Unit 3 and 4. Students should understand what was happening around the Prophet, peace be upon him, and how the Quran addressed real conditions in early Mecca and later Medina. In class, you can connect each historical point to what the Quran says about the message, the opposition, the formation of believers, and the development of a community. The main history references for the narrative timeline are the sealed nectar and donors Muhammad and the believers. A. People, 10. Prophet Muhammad is the central figure of the foundational period. He delivered the message of Islam and guided the early believers through strong resistance in Mecca and later community building in Medina. The Quran presents him as a human messenger who receives revelation, calling people to worship the one God, 41-6. It also shows how Allah prepared him with spiritual discipline and patience in the early stage, especially through night worship and endurance, 73. 1-10. This affirms his mission and leadership. Khadija bint Khuwaylid matters because early Islam began as a private faith experience before it became public. Her support shows that the first stage of Islam grew within a household and close circle, before open preaching faced public opposition. While these surahs do not name her, the Quran's focus on early strengthening through night worship fits that early period of private formation and resilience, 73-17. In this way, the Quran supports the need for spiritual strength at the beginning. Abu Talib is important because tribal protection was a real social institution in Mecca. His support reduced harm against the Prophet in a society where safety depended on clan backing. The Quran recognizes the reality of what people say and do in opposition and instructs the Prophet to be patient and dignified, 73-10. This shows the Quran reforming reliance. People may help, but ultimate strength is through Allah and patience. Abu Bakr represents steadfast faith and loyal support during persecution and hardship. He is part of why the early community survived and stayed united. The Quran describes those who say Allah is their Lord and remain firm as receiving angelic comfort and good news, 41-30. This aligns with Abu Bakr's role and affirms steadfastness as a defining feature of early believers. Umar ibn al-Khattab is an example of how Islam moved from being a small, pressured group to a more confident and organized community. His story reflects growth in public strength and community organization. The Quran in Al-Muzammil acknowledges that worship and obligations became manageable for the community, and that Allah made allowances while still encouraging recitation and prayer, 73-20. This supports communal development and shows faith expanding into community life. Uthman ibn Affan matters because the growing community needed order, trust, and fair procedure. As Islam developed socially and politically, daily life required rules that protected justice and prevented disputes. Al-Ma'idah includes structured legal guidance, such as the procedure of witnesses, showing that Islam was becoming a governed community with organized responsibilities. 5. 106-108. This affirms structured social order. Ali ibn Abi Talib highlights Islam's close beginnings around the Prophet. His early closeness shows that the foundations were formed through direct teaching, worship, and moral training. Al-Muzammil emphasizes early formation through worship and steady recitation as preparation for a weighty message, 73-17. This supports the idea that early believers were trained spiritually before they were trained politically. Bilal ibn Rabah is a key example because he shows that early Islam included oppressed people and challenged social hierarchies. His experience fits the Quranic message that people are tested and that value is based on deeds and God consciousness, not status, 67-2. The Quran reforms society by shifting honor from class and power to righteousness and endurance. Abu Jahl represents organized resistance in Mecca. He symbolizes the leadership that mocked the Quran and tried to stop people from listening. The Quran describes the mindset of rejection. People claim their hearts are covered and there is a barrier, 41-5, and it describes deliberate tactics such as telling others not to listen and to make noise over the recitation, 41-26. The Quran rejects these tactics and exposes them as denial rather than sincere searching. Moses, as presented in Taha, is included because the Quran uses earlier prophets to guide the Prophet and early Muslims. The story of Musa facing Pharaoh teaches how prophets confront tyranny with truth and courage. In Taha, Allah commands Musa to go to Pharaoh and speak firmly and clearly, 20:43-47. This functions as guidance. The Qur'an connects the Prophet's struggle to earlier prophetic struggles, giving the early community direction and hope. B. Places. 10. Mecca is the starting place of Islam's message. The early preaching phase happened there, and the Prophet faced strong opposition from leaders and many in society. The Quran reflects this Meccan resistance by quoting their refusal and describing how they tried to block the Quran from being heard. 41-5, 41-26. The Quran diagnoses that culture of denial and rejects it by calling people back to listening, reflection, and tawhid. Medina represents the development phase where the Muslim community formed institutions and laws. After the move, Islam became not only a personal faith but also a social system with rules that protected community well-being and justice. Al-Ma'idah contains strong examples of this mature stage, including guidance on halal, haram limits, preventing harm, and legal procedures like testimony. 5. 87-91, 5. 106-108. The Quran affirms building a governed community. The Kaaba was already a central religious symbol in Arabia, but Islam re-centered its meaning around worship of Allah alone. In this sense, Islam did not erase sacredness, it purified it. The Quran repeatedly insists that God is one and that worship belongs to Him, which reforms worship away from associating partners. 41-6. This keeps the idea of sacredness but corrects belief. The Cave of Hira is associated with the beginning of revelation and the spiritual start of the mission. Although Hira is not named in these specific surahs, the Quran's emphasis on early recitation and night worship fits the beginning stage when the Prophet was being prepared internally. 73-14. This supports the idea that revelation-led formation came before large public expansion. Yathrib, before it became known as Medina, matters because it shows the city's pre-Islam identity and the type of society Islam entered. It was a multi-group space that needed justice, fair dealing, and strong moral leadership. The Quran's insistence on standing firmly for justice, even when emotions or group loyalties are involved, fits the needs of a complex society. 5-8. This reforms social order through justice. Masjid Quba represents a fresh beginning in the central role of worship in forming a community. Even without naming the mosque, Al-Muzammil describes the community worship culture and shows allowances and structure as believers grow. 73-20. This aligns with early communal worship becoming part of organized community life. Al-Masjid an-Nabawi became the central place for worship, learning, leadership, and community decisions. It reflects the shift from a small group to a functioning society with institutions. Al-Ma'idah's structured instructions, such as witness rules, show the kind of organized community life that would be managed around a communal center. 5. 106-108. This affirms institutions of order. Badr is a turning point event in the community's survival and confidence. Even though Badr is not directly named in these surahs, the Quran's strong language on accountability, reward, punishment, and moral seriousness fits the reality of conflict and the need for ethical clarity. 67, 6-11. It supports justice and accountability as essential in crisis. Uhud represents a major trial for the believers that taught resilience and discipline. Again, the event is not named in these surahs, but the Quran's instruction to remain patient with what opponents say and to keep dignity under pressure directly fits the experience of hardship. 73, 10-11. This supports steadfastness and emotional discipline. Hudaybiyah shows political maturity through treaty making and long-term strategy. It represents Islam's development into principled public leadership. The Quran in Al-Ma'idah stresses fulfillment of commitments and justice, which matches the ethical framework behind treaties and agreements. 5-1, 5-8. This affirms principled agreements rather than impulsive conflict. C. Events. 10. The beginning of revelation is the key event that starts Islam as a revelation-based tradition. The Quran shows the early stage as one of preparation, measured recitation, seriousness, and building inner strength. 73-14. This affirms revelation as the authority source of the tradition. Public preaching and community hostility occurred when the message challenged beliefs and social power, leading to organized opposition. The Quran records the rejection mentality and the tactics used to stop people listening, including claiming barriers and creating noise during recitation. 41-5, 41-26. The Qur'an rejects these tactics and presents the Qur'an as clear guidance. Persecution of early believers shaped the community's identity around endurance and faith. The Qur'an instructs patient endurance in the face of insults and rejection, 73-10, and promises comfort and glad tidings for those who remain firm, 41-30. This supports perseverance as a core early value. Early spiritual training was a major event process, not a single moment. Before community power, Allah trained the Prophet and believers through night prayer and steady recitation. Al-Muzammil directly frames this as preparation for carrying a weighty message, 73-17. This affirms worship as the foundation of the tradition's early growth. The Hijrah to Medina marks the shift from a persecuted minority to an organized community. Although the migration itself is not explicitly named in these surahs, the later Medinan-style rules in Al-Ma'idah show the outcomes of that shift, such as public policy and legal procedure. 5. 90-91. 5. 106-108. This affirms community building as part of Islam's early development. Building a governed community happened as new boundaries, ethical rules, and legal procedures became necessary. Al-Ma'idah regulates extremes in religion, bans socially harmful practices, and establishes witness procedures. 5. 87-88. 5. 90-91. 5. 106-108. This reforms society through clear revelation-based guidance. The reform of social harms is shown when Islam corrected unjust norms that were culturally accepted. An-Nahl condemns the shame and grief some people felt at the birth of daughters, 1658-59. This rejects that practice and reforms moral values toward justice and dignity. Interfaith clarification, especially concerning Christian belief about Jesus, became important as Muslims interacted with other communities. Al-Ma'idah presents a strong clarification that worship belongs to Allah alone and rejects the idea of worshipping others, while affirming God's oneness and accountability. 5. 116-120. This corrects belief boundaries in a multi-faith environment. The prohibition of alcohol and gambling reflects Islam's community-wide policy to protect society from harm, hatred, and distraction from worship. Al-Ma'idah explains that these practices cause social damage and are therefore prohibited. 5. 90-91. This rejects harmful acts to protect community well-being. Finally, the Qur'an gives moral lessons through earlier prophet narratives to guide the new community. Yusuf models repentance and forgiveness within family conflict. 12. 91-92. 12. 97-98. While Taha shows prophetic courage and confronting tyranny. 2043-47. These narratives are affirmed as guidance and help early Muslims interpret their struggle with patience and hope. Student-friendly sackline, same idea, in paragraph form. Early Islam began in Mecca where many people showed strong public resistance, even trying to block others from listening to the Qur'an, 41-5, 41-26. Because of this pressure, revelation first trained believers through night worship, steady recitation, and patience, 73, 1-10. After the move to Medina, Islam developed social institutions through law, justice, and legal procedure. 5. 87-91. 5. 106-108. And it clarified belief in a multi-faith environment by affirming tawhid and rejecting worship of others. 5. 116-120.